Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about astrology in the fourth house in astrology. First off, as far as what it rules, it's connected with the home, family, people you're close to home with, roots, ancestry, traditions, the less dominant parent, which is often the mother. Uh, I would say emotions too, because the fourth house corresponds with the zodiac sign Cancer. That end or latter part of life, who you are at the core, emotional security, and even graves it can be associated with. And I'm going to give you an example of how this actually, I think in this example, an example I'm going to talk about later through a transit somebody had, how it's validated and also burials. Now, the thing is, look at the sign on the cusp of the house at first, and the sign that's on the cusp of the house could represent, could be people that are associated with the house. It could be the manner you go about fourth house issues. I mean, like with me, I have Leo on the cusp of my fourth house. I think it's interesting because it's at 1 degree Leo, and the fourth house could actually represent, I mean, it can represent people that are in your prominent, your home, your family life. Sometimes it could actually be a person associated with that sign, that when the sun, moon, or ascendant in that sign that is on that fourth house cusp. Or it could simply be somebody that embodies those characteristics. I have uh, mother that is the less dominant parent, which is often the mother. My mother has a 29-degree Cancer ascendant, which of course that's 2 degrees from the 1 degree Leo. So she's on the cusp of that. And I had my two grandparents on my mother's side. Her parents were both Sun and Leos. So, and I've stayed with at least one Leo person, rented a room out from a Leo sun and ascendant. Then the thing is too, being given that it's emotional security and what gives you that safety and security, it could be like for me, since I have Leo on the fourth house cusp, being that dominant person perhaps in my home or you're in family life, feeling that sense of royalty where I'm staying at, whether I am that person or not. It's just a feeling, you know, as far as that goes. And since the fourth house could be emotions as well, it could indicate very Leo-like ferocious emotions time to time, and ones that can be very loud and boisterous, to say the absolute least. The thing too is in the fact that it can rule graves and burials. It may be something where mine might be somewhat extravagant, to say the least, if that is how I decide. To as far as after I die, what do I want done with my remains? But anyway, first, the next thing I want to talk about, it's also important to look at it and see if there's any planets in that house, and see if the house inhabits any planets, because of course the planet and the sign that the planet is in can flavor that house. Now in my case, I have Venus in Leo in the fourth house. It's even more prominent because it is a singleton in my chart. It's the only planet I have that is in a fire sign. And the thing about it is, Venus in the fourth house by itself could be someone that strives for peace, tranquility, and harmony in their home and their family life. And the thing about, and also I think this could indicate too that there can be more, perhaps money, maybe extravagant funds, maybe that I might come into at that end, that latter part of life, or maybe even a relationship. Could be with a Leo sun, moon, or ascendant person, or simply one that embodies those traits in that latter or end part of life. It could also indicate extravagant, exorbitant spending on home related matters, and also just that love of the pride, really, in my ancestry or any roots or traditions, perhaps. Uh, so, anyway. And the thing too is, it's, of course, it's also important to see if you have any aspects, whether it might be to the fourth house cusp. A lot of people don't really look at aspects to house cusp, but I think they can be significant as well. It can show you how your home life may be going, whether it's harmonious or not, your emotional security, and matters with the less dominant parent, which is often the mother, whether it could be more harmonious or whether it's not as harmonious. It might be more adverse. If you have predominantly adverse aspects that are made to your fourth house cusp, it could be where you might have a little bit more difficulty in terms of situations that with the home, your family life, people you're close to home with. I mean, somebody that's got, say, they have Pluto making an adverse aspect to their fourth house cusp may often go through upheavals and crisis situations in their home life. That, I would say, that could even be true with Pluto posited in the fourth house. Now, with me, I have Saturn in Taurus in the 12th house, making a square to my Venus in Leo in the fourth house. So that could indicate where getting that money for sometimes extravagant home costs might require a little bit more of a laborious effort sometimes, and it also could indicate sorrows and disappointments and even delays in the love department with someone maybe I might feel close to home with, or just in relationships in general. And again, given that I have Venus and Leo, they could be Leo, Sun, Moon, or Ascendant people, or simply ones that embody those characteristics. And also the fact that Saturn is in the 12th house, it shows a nature that Saturn in the 12th house, I mean, by itself can indicate a nature that might be somewhat introverted and introspective. And the fact that it's squaring my Venus, that could play some role. It might indicate there may be a conflict with that in terms of having a relationship that I really desire. So there is, and then you have Venus and Leo, which could have the love of the extroversion and gregariousness. So you understand, or saying there's a little bit of a conflict there. And then, of course, when you have squares and oppositions in the chart, that can cause a lot of tension and exasperation because of that. But anyway, now it's also important to look and see what the ruler of your fourth house, what house is that posited. Now, the ruler of my fourth house falls in the second house, but it's conjunct my third house, so it could have some flavor. I do believe that it does have flavoring of the second house and third house. When you're talking about the ruler of a house, it tells me, I mean, it's basically what it is, how it manifests. You're bringing the energy from that house where the ruling planet is, and it's being deposited or injected into the house it falls in. So in my example, I have the Leo again on the fourth house cusp. The ruler of that is the Sun. Sun falls in the second house. So this could be a point where, I mean, if I actually was doing something consistently in generating money, I might be bringing people from the home or the family into that place. I might be strongly connected with home and family values. The home life may be something that I value strongly. The fact that I'm bringing, I have this in conjunct my third house, because the ruler of my fourth house conjuncts my third, could be an indicator of somebody that may bring people to their home life into their short journeys. Now it's interesting because sadly I've been dependent on a lot on people as far as my short journeys go, because I've had to have people drive me to the stores, because I can't. I've stated this in previous videos. I have trouble operating a motor vehicle, not because I don't have the mental faculties to do so, but I have irrevocable extensive nerve damage to my arms and hands. So I think that's how it could manifest and pan out for me. So another thing that I wanted to get at is that It's also important to look at transits to the fourth house, because they could be significant. Transits can often signify very spontaneous, unanticipated events in one's life. Hold on a moment, people. Sorry about that, I'm back. But anyway, now I want to talk about another person in the exact, I believe this is the exact date, but I'm not 100% sure, but I do remember the transit that took place at the time for this person. Now, on what I believe was March 16th, 1991, there was a woman by the name of Jessica King. This was featured on an Investigation Discovery show, and she was murdered in a graveyard. She had been brutally raped prior to that by this man, and the man chased her into a graveyard area, and she ultimately perished at the hands of this person there. Now, at the time, transit Neptune was in her, and as far as the solar sunrise chart, I couldn't get a time of birth, of course, so I had to improvise into a solar sunrise chart. Transit Neptune was in her fourth house of graves and the end of life. I found it interesting that at the time, based on what they were showing on the show and based Investigation Discovery episode on this, that appeared to have very, very foggy, misty conditions. Neptune, of course, can be associated with fog and mist, and it obviously, I mean, it looked like it was somewhat, as far as the atmosphere, where it was very nebulous and unclear, and it was very foggy at that time at that graveyard site. And the fourth house is the end of life, and it's also connected with graves, and she did perish in a graveyard at this time. Now, she also had at least 2 or 3 other transits in that fourth house in the solar sunrise chart of the end of life and one may have been in Aquarius, but there were at least 2 others I believe were in Capricorn. Of course, Capricorn is that very, despondent, sad, melancholy sign, so that obviously flavored this energy, sadly, at this time. Now, it's also important to look at aspects in a progressed chart that involve the fourth house, whether it's the cusp or planets that are in it, because this could be things that could be transpiring in your life at the time, but often will be more protracted and prolonged, because transits that not transits, but what I'm saying is aspects, placements in a progressed chart are going to often last longer than transits, because as an example, especially with the slower moving planets, because if you have, say, a transit in a natal chart, say the sun is transiting a certain house in the chart, the average duration is going to be about 30 days, because you have a house is on average is going to be 30 degrees, the average size of the house. I know you have smaller ones, bigger ones, if you're using Placidus system, depending, that I understand, but I'm talking about on average. But if you're talking about a progressed chart, you may have the sun in a house for 30, on average about 30 years, because again, it goes back to the average house being 30 degrees, and you're talking about the 1 degree per year movement. So, or actually, I should say, it might even be there longer, because the house could be moving at the same rate as the sun. But the thing is, if you take a generational planet, you take like a slow-moving planet. The sun wasn't the best example in that, but Neptune, for example, could move at a very slow rate. The planet Neptune may actually, in as far as a transit go, may be under 30. I'm sure it's under 30 years, but it might stay in a house on average close to 30 years in a progressed chart, because again, Neptune does not move at a very fast rate at all. It moves very marginally day to day, and you have an average house. And you have in progressions, you're going to have a house cusp move on average at about 1 degree per year. So I hope that clarifies things. Sorry about the mix-up before, but the thing about it is, anyway, what I want to get at though is, like, as an example, I mean, let's say that somebody has going back to the Pluto. I mean, if you have Pluto making an adverse aspect to your fourth house cusp in a progressed chart, it could indicate a period that might be prolonged where you're dealing with upheavals or crisis situations in the home or family life. I have Pluto in my fourth house in my progressed chart. It's been there for some time, and this could really, and I also have Uranus in my fourth house in my progressed chart, and that could suggest a lot of disruptions, and you're talking about upheavals in the family life, and moving constantly. Saying I've been peripatetic has obviously been, to me, a vast understatement. Now, the thing is, now let's take another example. Let's say that you have let's say a better, more auspicious example. Let's say that in a progressed chart you have Mercury making a sextile or trine to the fourth house cusp. Well, that could be a very beneficial period as far as communication goes with home and family members. And say that Mercury is in Taurus and it's in sextile or trine aspect to the fourth house cusp in the progressed chart. That could be especially good for very peaceful communications. They might be very deliberate, methodical ones, but could be very persistent ones as well. But where you have where it's basically the communications are auspicious and there's not really that much discord or worrying about much misunderstanding with home and family members, people you're close to home with, the less dominant parent, which is often the mother. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.